we could get going this morning, we appreciate you being here. Normally, again, I would love to give you some more time for this meeting. I would also like to do it on a better weekend than this. We have a lot of kids that have gone back to college or are on their way back to college. Parents are bringing them, and so we are missing some people this weekend. So, but we kind of, once I explain what's happening, I think you'll understand why we had to call for the meeting this weekend in particular, in light of where we're at with the parking lot. And so we'll get to that in just a minute. For those of you who do not know, Gary Vandermark went home to be with the Lord either late last night or early this morning sometime. I'm not exactly sure of the time, but Cliff called me and Natalie texted my wife, and so spent a couple hours with them yesterday over at Regency, and they were all there, good spirits, and actually my prayer before I left was, God, the family wants him to go home. They don't want him to be there anymore. And I left. I've been in those situations quite a bit, and so when I left, we prayed about that, and yet when I left, I told Carol, I think he has several days left, maybe more. And God was like, oh, you don't know anything, do you, right? You think you know, but thankfully, mercifully, and graciously, God took him home to be with him, and he's having a great worship service this morning. I don't know the details of the funeral yet. They would like for it to be here. Obviously, this church was a huge part of his life. He served on so many different boards and committees, and he's responsible for guiding us through a lot of construction phases here at the church. I've kind of picked his brain a lot. Do you remember what happened here? Do you remember how this went? And he was able to work us through a few things that we didn't have drawings for, didn't have a recollection of. So be praying for the family. I think they're relieved, but now it's some added care for Carol, helping her to adjust to a new life, and the things Gary did a lot, and so figuring out how to bring all that together. So we'll have a word of prayer for them. When we know the details of the funeral, we'll let you know. While I say they would like to do it here, there's a chance they may not be able to do it here based on what we're going to talk about this morning and what the details will incur throughout the week. And so we'll get there. But let's start with prayer. God, thank you so much for your grace and your mercy. God, we prayed for it yesterday around Gary's bed. We asked for your mercy to take him to be with you, because it's far better to be in the presence of you than to be here, especially in the earthly body that Gary had at that time. And God, his family didn't want to see him that way anymore. And but God, at the same time, we've lost a great man who served you well. He wasn't perfect, and he would admit to that, but God, he was such a loving man, demonstrated the love of Christ to others. He was such a generous and sacrificial man, demonstrated that generosity and sacrifice of you to us, to so many. God, he was someone that I'm thankful that I've had the privilege of knowing for 15 years now. And so, God, as the family adjusts to a new, just a new reality without Gary, I pray that you would help them in the days and weeks to come, give them that grace that will be needed for that. We think especially of Carol. There's going to be a lot of new things for her. And I just pray that you would give her the grace to handle each thing as it comes her way. Pray for Natalie as she will bear a lot of that, helping her mom through a lot of these changes. Give her wisdom through that process. And so we are just thankful to know he's with you. So we are sad, but at the same time, we do not sorrow as if we have no hope, and we rejoice in that. And we ask it all in Christ's name, amen. Cliff reminded me one of the days I was visiting at Regency or the hospital, I can't remember which one, that he knew Gary and Carol before he was dating Natalie. And so he had a relationship with them far before he had a relationship with Natalie. So that it's tough on him too. It's more than just his father-in-law. He was a friend and mentor before he even started dating her. So our business meeting today is quite simple. And Tim, I'm just going to have you come right up here. Sorry, Haven, just going to have to deal with it. It's our parking lot and where we are at this point in time. If you drove by the south entrance this morning, you would see that is unusable for a while till it dries out. They may have to pump that when they come back here, but that's completely underwater. And we knew that would happen because it's undercut for what they were going to do next, and it's not ready to drain properly. But here's where we are. Here's the problem that we're facing. And, so here's the problem we're facing. The problem we have is that there's soft spots throughout the parking lot, okay? And we will show you where those are in just a minute. You may have walked across the parking lot this morning and figured out where some of those soft spots were. We aren't parking cars in certain places this morning because of all the rain that we got over the last couple days. It's very soft in certain areas. And so one of the things I explained this last week, and Tim and I have talked about it. Well, we have gotten a lot of rain in July, way more rain than we've ever gotten, right? I think to some degree, while that slowed us down in some aspects, like they couldn't work on a few days, it really demonstrated the kind of parking lot that we had. So if it didn't rain at all, we may have been fooled a little bit as to some of these soft spots. With all the rain, it has definitely shown us the true condition of our parking lot. And from what we've been able to surmise, this place was kind of like a swampy area that people just filled with all kinds of junk. You name it, they threw it in there. And so a lot of asphalt, cement, topsoil. I don't think they've found any engine parts from the truck plant or anything, but there's a lot that's been back there. And so it's hard to get all that water out because there's too many pockets for it to drain properly. And so I'm going to have Tim kind of walk through. These are the three ways in which we can address each of the soft spots, and then we'll talk about what's the good, the better, and the best of those solutions. This is the only thing we're discussing today, so if you don't care about parking lots, this will be an extremely boring meeting to you. But all right, Tim.
So Pastor Scott's description's very accurate that there's a lot of junk soils down deep. If we were to go with option number one to fix these soft spots and undercut and backfill with stone, we're probably looking at a minimum of 2 feet of undercut and backfill of stone. And in the worst areas, that could go from 2 upward very quickly. So it would be really hard to come back with us and say, here's how much that's going to cost, how much more we need to spend to get it to be right. In projects that are municipal projects or school projects, those kinds of things where there's seemingly endless budgets, they just do it. A board says, yep, do whatever you have to do to fix it. We could easily be well over an additional $100,000 if we do stone and backfill. It's a good method. It's a time-tested method. The problem is our issues are down very deep. In fact, in this back corner that we're not parking in today, the contractor got their loader stuck all the way down to the frame. And those tires are about as tall as I am, so they found there still wasn't a bottom even at that. The machine was sitting on the frame, and the tires still weren't hitting anything hard. So we think the problem spots are down deep, meaning the undercut and backfill would be deep and expensive. Stone's expensive. So it's an option. It's probably not our best option in our case. Option number 2 of the same kind of stone, but using a geogrid fabric. It's a slightly better option. It just adds one more layer of cost. So you would put, let me set my coffee down because evidently I can't talk without my hands moving around. I'd be quiet if you tied them behind my back. You bring the stone up, and then we would undercut, bring stone up, then put a geogrid, which is a plastic like squares in a big roll that has some tensile strength. So when tires drive over it, it wouldn't deflect as deeply. That plastic kind of pulls in, and then you put some more stone on top of that and then pave on top of that. So we're not going to have to put any less stone if we do the number 2 option. We would just be adding to the stone also geogrid. Geogrid can be useful in areas where you see, let me back up for a second. So we did what's called a proof roll. Those of you that are around projects like this kind of probably know what that phrase means, but we did a proof roll on the parking lot. We load a dump truck up with a lot of weight in it and then make tire tracks over the whole parking lot. And you watch how much the dirt deflects. So it'll go down and kind of bounce back up again. There's acceptable levels and there's unacceptable levels. We're largely unacceptable. So there are spots where the truck tires deflect, this much, 4 or 5 inches. That's probably borderline about as much as you can push geogrid to be a solution. We had a lot of spots out here where the tires were deflecting a lot more than that, more like 8, even 10 inches in spots. So, and that's when it wasn't raining for a whole week before it. So I think we're pushing that solution a little farther than probably it is designed to really handle. So it's a decent option, probably not our best option. The third one I think is our best option. The third one is soil stabilization. So what that is, some of you probably remember seeing the big pulverizer machine sitting out there before they did that work, because they brought it in on a Friday and started on Monday, I believe. It's kind of like a giant rototiller with bullet point teeth on it instead of big spade teeth, and it chewed up the asphalt that was there. So the soil stabilizer is very similar. This time we're just mixing something into it. We're going to add lime and Portland cement. So if you've ever mixed mortar in a wheelbarrow, they're 2 of the ingredients that you're needing to add to make concrete. You would also add some kind of aggregate material, stone, sand. We have lots of that. And you would add water. And fortunately, we have lots of that. So this machine will make passes all the way across our worst areas. And when that is done and when that dries, it is hard like concrete. It's not finished like our new concrete sidewalks. It wouldn't be like that, but it would look just like the parking lot does now, but you wouldn't leave tire tracks on it driving across it. I personally have not used this method myself on any projects. I've been around some projects that have. Our contractor has used it a lot, and I think this is one of the points where you, in a project like this, have to rely on the fact that you chose a good contractor. Mm-hmm. And I think we've all been encouraged through the process that we did get a good one. And we go to them and say, hey, you're the pro, what's your recommendations here? And this is definitely the recommendation of our contractor. A comparison project would be Faith Baptist Church in Davison. They had a very similar situation. So that's on Atherton Road, just west of Irish, I think. If you know that area, there's a lot of low swampy areas there too. And they had a similar condition where they had some really bad soft spots. They stabilized their parking lot. They did that, I think, 3 years ago, and it's been great. So I drove over there and checked it out.
You want to mention how thick it is, too, because it's pretty thick.
Yeah, they're going to stabilize anywhere from 8 to 12 inches thick, based on how bad it is. So if you picture a concrete sidewalk and you put some reinforcement in it, you can kind of span over some soft spots, right? Like we build bridges and they're made out of concrete and they don't touch anything on the bottom. They like span over. So concrete has a lot of spanning ability. By doing the soil stabilization, we're kind of making a concrete-like product that can span over some of that soft spots. Tire weight comes in a very fine point, so there's a very precise point of loading, and the more we can strengthen that and spread that load across, the longer the asphalt lasts that's on top. So you have the print
Yeah.
for that, right?
Yeah, so we've had lots of conversations about, so ultimately the recommendation is to go to soil stabilization. Just after talking to Brandon, Kennedy, Tim, and them have had lots of conversations, and Seth, and then talking,
The engineer too.
yes, and Rowe Engineering, and then talking with me, and then talking with the deacons. Our recommendation is to go with the soil stabilization, and then in what parts are we going to do the soil stabilization? So I try to do my best. Hopefully you can see this is our parking lot here. That green space, that was going to be where the green area, all the green areas were going to be combined into one. And that's where on the original drawing, well, the fourth drawing, that's kind of where it was going to go. But as we start looking at soil stabilization, how do we get the best bang for the buck? We're going to move that because actually where that green spot is one of the hardest spots in our parking lot. So just go figure. And so we're going to move that. Our desire is to move it, well, it will be moved in the back. It'll be a little bit bigger than probably what it was currently called for, but, and Tim can explain why that is probably the worst spot back there, so.
Yeah, so when you look at per square foot of how much it's costing us to build parking spots, that back corner would be the absolute highest cost per square foot out of the whole project. So it just doesn't make sense to keep it where it was originally designed. And we can go into the softest corner, all the water goes that direction anyway already. Put grass there, we don't have to landscape it any more than just grass, and makes another nice spot for snow removal to stack snow there. So the spot where it was, it really is, it's remarkable. You can stake it out exactly where it was supposed to be, and that's the hardest spot across the back. It's the only hard spot across the back. So it's kind of ironic how that happens. So there's a little bit of fill that'll need to come out of our soil stockpile, the AKA sledding hill. That'll come back to fill that in up to grade. So it'll be about the same elevation as the asphalt. So there'll be parking lot right up to it, and then just kind of a grass.
Oh, the grass
square
part, yes.
there.
Which all of that corner has to come up anyways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to come up. There's a sloping line there.
Yeah.
So it's less fill the closer it gets to the building.
So we will lose parking there, but we will pick up parking where the other green spot. We just will replace that with parking spaces. So we don't, it's even at that point. And we have more parking spaces than we are actually required to, so.
We need to have 197 spaces. Right now, this is designed with 218 spaces. I think we might actually lose fewer spaces by putting the green space where it's on the screen than where it was originally proposed. It for sure won't go the other way.
All right, so that's step one. Step two would be, what are we stabilizing? All of that. I don't know what to tell you. It's all bad. So we talked about possibly geogridding that entryway, the south entrance, but there are some really bad spots through there. And so instead of doing certain areas along there, it's just better to do the whole strip.
GeoGrid gets challenging when you start doing patches. Also, soil stabilizing gets challenging when you start doing individual patches, because ground will It'll move, it'll respond to temperature, freeze and thaw. It'll respond differently where it's been stabilized and where it's not been stabilized. So you can end up with kind of stress and expansion cracks in those areas. So by stabilizing right out, and this is, hate to call you out in front of everybody,
Yeah,
but
no.
this is slightly off because we're actually not going to stabilize the strip right next to the building. That's where
Yes.
that's where the parking spots
Yep.
turn into the building. We're going to stabilize the southernmost part of that drive right up against the fence along our neighbor's property there where the drive part is. And that's the drive for the garbage truck to come in. Our buses are not really that heavy, but if we had heavy vehicles in here for any reason, they would be using that south drive as the heavy one. So
Yeah,
that'll be stabilized all the way through.
that whole pink thing, it's not even on the driveway in the one part. Right as you enter the driveway. It's my bad.
Must have shifted.
It did. It shifted when I moved my computer out to here. It shifted. Actually, long story. I was working on it this morning because we couldn't get it to work out here. So that's everything. That's all we would. Well, that's all. That's half the parking lot we need to stabilize. But we feel like that's the best solution. So you're probably wondering, well, how much is this going to cost us, right? Yeah. Shoot.
You just mentioned that not doing whole areas affects, because the freeze thaw cycle. So if we're not doing, are we gonna create a crack down the middle there on that south side and then that area right there where we're not doing it?
We could create a crack along the south between the drive and the parking stalls. And I think if there's going to be cracks that'll form someplace, right? So we want to make sure that those cracks aren't frequent and that they're not often perpendicular to our drive pattern. So this way they'll be parallel with our drive pattern. I don't think that'd be a real big problem there because you'll come in the drive, like if you're coming into church, you'll come in the drive and then you'd make a left turn to park up against the gym wall there. So yes, there could be a little crack that forms along that for sure. Wherever we get cracks over time, we'll have to fill and seal. But we want to minimize start, stop all the way through the drive because there are spots of that drive that are worse and better. None of them are really good, but there's definitely worse and better. So we could do start and stop and try to save, a couple extra $1,000, but we're probably going to regret having done that down the road. I don't know if that answers your question or
Yeah.
not. But.
Are we gonna regret not doing that other side? I mean, how do you stop the garbage truck when there's no cars parked there, driving down where cars are parked?
The striping will kind of deter them because they'd be driving straight across parking spots. So I think their natural flow is going to be to stay kind of in the middle, which would be on the drive. The garbage truck that's a good point though, is once this is done, we're gonna have to sit down with the trash company and say, here's where you can drive, here's where you can't. So we're just gonna give them a map like this that's shaded, that shows them where to turn around. Doing it this way, they can pull straight up to the dumpster pad, dump the dumpster, back up into a 3-point turn, kind of right where the big stone pile is in the gym parking lot right now, and then pull out and stay on something that's been stabilized the whole time.
And that the parking up against the building is actually pretty solid. And then with the geogrid, because where you are doing the geogrid there, that will be good. There'll be some differences, but even up in the north where we start the soil stabilizing, there will probably wind up being a crack one day there. They're different.
Yep.
One's soil stabilized, one's just rock and, yeah, Matt.
Also, the way the drive being redirected, you would almost have to purposely turn the truck to drive over the parking spots and then turn back.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for those of you who can't hear, with a change in the drive pattern, once he comes in and it turns, he's heading straight back to our
You have a laser
dumpster
on
pad.
that? You have a laser on that?
Yeah, but I don't think it works. So.
There's a triangle right outside the kitchen door that will be grassed that kind of forces, I think that's what Matt's saying, it kind of forces the trucks towards the right, towards the south, and will keep them lined up with the dumpster. So to drive over top of the parking spaces, they'd have to kind of do a weird S-curve out of the way. So I don't think that'll be a big issue.
Or they drive through our grass, one of the two.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to some costs. And we'll leave, you can ask all the questions you want here as we move along. Oh, I don't know why I'm forwarding my PowerPoint. That has nothing to do with that. So $93,000 to do all of that. All right. So, but let's explain some numbers, all right, before we panic. Let's explain some numbers. Estimated cost to date is $677,587. All right, that includes, let me just kind of pull my numbers up. That $677,587 includes what we've used of our contingency up to this point. We know we've used $13,000 of that, so that's added into Kennedy's bid. It includes all of Kennedy's bid, and then you add the $93,000 in there. So that brings us to $770,000 of this project. We were originally estimating that the project with Kennedy's bid plus contingency would get us to $734,000. So we've basically added about $35,000 because we still have some contingency, right? We still have, what's that number? 13 minus 70, 57. Come on, Kristen, you're my numbers person. 57,000 is in there, all right? Amount given to date is, this is given, raised, money market, interest, everything. Money that we've been paying ourselves for the last almost year is $701,121. This would include our payment to ourselves in August, interest from our money market in August. We pretty much know what that's paying out month to month. That brings us to $701,000. If we were to not raise one more penny, nothing, we would need a loan to cover the remainder of it for about $70,000, and that's if we don't save any money through Kennedy. They haven't run all the numbers yet for us. They don't know exactly where they're at with our project. We know we aren't going to use all that GeoGrid, so there will be some savings there. You're like, well, that could probably be $35,000. No, it's not going to be $35,000. It may be a few $1,000s. We may not use all the stone. We may use all the stone. We don't know that yet until they start getting into this. But there's not a lot of areas where we're going to save money other than the GeoGrid that we haven't used. I did realize part of that Kennedy's bid also included the fence around the dumpster, which we're gonna do. So we'll save a few $1,000s there. So yeah, if you want to say, well, our loan might in the end be $65,000, it may be whatever. We're looking at $70,000 max, we're assuming, okay? We do have that number from whoever's doing the soil stabilizing. I don't even know what that company is, so. Which brings us to this number, because some of you may be wondering this number. We're voting for financing up to 70. May not be that much, may be that much, don't know for sure. We're working on that, but we want to give a number now so that when we go to a bank, I don't have to come back and get more approval to do what needs to be done. So what would that leave us? Well, that would leave us a loan payment of about those numbers. And I was supposed to take the 5-year off because we're not going to look at a 5-year loan. We're just going to do a 10-year loan. I forgot to do that. And then there's no early payment penalty, so we can pay whatever we want to pay towards that. Currently, we're paying $3,000 a month towards a loan payment. We would continue to do that because it's in our budget through the remainder of this year. And so we'd be paying that down pretty quickly. If we need $70,000, every few thousand we bring in or save, that dollar amount goes down. Any questions now? Shoot.
What are the chances, like we haven't heard Kennedy's numbers yet, what are the chances that it's higher than 70,000?
So
His question was, we haven't gotten Kennedy's numbers. What if they come in higher than what they put the bid out for? What happens then? Will our loan be over $70,000?
So I really doubt that will happen, but it's a good question. I've been watching this pretty closely with them as they've been building it. So what would change any of their numbers, up or down? And I think most of it is down, and we're probably talking like a couple $1,000s. But it's the unit count. So for example, one of the things that was in the plan is a perimeter drain around the parking lot. And in the bid, they have a certain number of lineal feet. So they actually count with survey how many feet they did put in, and then charge us that many feet times their unit rate. So if it was put in the bid at 1,600 feet and it comes in at 1,595 feet, you got a couple dollars there. So it's the sum total of all the different line items being actually trued up to what we actually did versus what the plan said. And in most of the cases, the units have been a little bit lower. Because we tried to bid it out with like a worst case scenario assumptions. So as I've just kind of been, not hard numbers, but just along the project and tracking it, most of the things are coming in slightly lower than where the bid was. But I really don't think there's more than a couple $1,000s of savings there.
We know we haven't used all the stone. We've been able to really utilize a lot of the asphalt millings, and we'll need all those asphalt millings. But I don't know how much more than that. Brad? So first question, we can't not do this. I would say yes, we can't not do this. So in fixing this problem, are we getting a better product in the end?
Yes, significantly better. What has become very obvious in the course of the project is we had some pretty bad drainage issues. I appreciate how you said that in the beginning, that all the rain we had didn't create the problem, it highlighted the problem and allowed us to really truly see it. So with the ditching that we have, the under drains that were put in, the downspout drains that are all hooked up now, I think we've got a far better product going forward because we're taking care of the water issue. So soil stabilizing is the best of the three options for us. It's typically the best option. It's typically the most expensive option. I don't actually think it's the most expensive option for us, but yes, a much better product when we're done.
How does this affect the timeline?
That is one of the reasons why we called this meeting, because originally we thought these guys would be booked out for weeks on end, but potentially.
Yeah, we're actually penciled in for Tuesday morning with the soil stabilizer. I think we have to push them back a little bit because of all the rain we got, and the contractor needs to bring in a bunch more stone between now and when the stabilizer gets here, and they have to lay that in the south drive, and we don't want to do that on top of mud. So we have to play the weather a little bit, but this is not going to add more time. This is actually going to shorten the time that we would have experienced had we done either option number 1 or 2, because with those it's much more sensitive to moisture, and we really have to let it dry out. So this option allows us to get paved. I don't have a problem saying that I'm pretty confident we'll be paved by the end of September. If we did not do soil stabilizing, I think we'd be we'd be the last person in line at the asphalt plants on November 15th saying, hey, don't forget about us. We were going to be in a bad spot without this option.
Which means we would have not been able to do lines, because you put lines down in cold, they're not going to stick. They'll get, yeah, it just wouldn't.
Or we would have done it in two parts, and we would have paved everything that's hard, and then come back next year after the spring dries up and try to do the rest. So
Which one would have been?
no good options, really.
Milt, and then,
Looking at the amount of finance, remind me back when we first started our Pave the Way campaign, what were we looking at financing then?
so we needed 734,000. We've brought in 270,000 since May. Well, more than 270 now. So we would have needed like
Well, I'm asking what if we originally think we might need if we didn't get the extra money.
close to 300. We went to the bank asking for 300. We knew we were going to be less than 300, but we were asking for 300.
Because isn't that where the $3,000 payment
Yes.
idea came from?
Isn't it kind of amazing that so far got us down 300,000 down to 70?
Yes. Yeah. I was just talking with Jonathan about that this morning. Like 70 in the end is not bad, if that's what it comes out to. So, Jan.
It's loosely firm. So the sketch that Pastor Scott had up before of the pink or purple, don't throw me under the bus for saying pink or purple. I know it's one of the two. I just don't know the difference. That was a shape that we came up with the contractor, using the contractor's bidding software and just drawing some rough lines on a computer screen. So it's a little loose. There's probably spots where you can go 10 feet this way or 10 feet that way. If we approve a dollar amount, we'll go back to that sub and say, we want the most bang for our buck on this dollar amount. And that will get managed the day we're actually doing it here on site. So there's a lot of on-site direction going to, don't take a pass here, move over and take a pass here because this one's good. On right where we make all those lines, and like look in the gym parking lot area, how it goes kind of over and down, right where the big pile of stone is right now. If that has to be shifted a little bit, or you round a corner, so we're going to spend, we would spend that 93,000 and get the most bang for the buck out of that. So it is a number that didn't just come from the contractor, it came from his sub, which is Wadles. They're up in, way up north someplace. And so he said, I can do this many square feet for this price. And I think this square foot calculation is, I think it's something like 40-some thousand. It's about an acre. I think it's about 40-some thousand square feet. Don't quote me on that number. I don't have that in front of me, but it's a square foot calculation.
And the machine is the most expensive.
Yeah, getting the machine here for the day. So there's kind of a minimum cost for this machine to show up and do work. So we want to see how much can we get done in a day for that, or 2 days, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
So for whatever it's worth, I was part of the construction team at this building right north of here.
Okay.
Keep all those heavy-duty trucks there.
Oh, okay.
So the soil conditions were all the same.
Yep.
They tried doing stone, vanilla stone, but they ended up doing stabilization
Oh, did they?
for the whole site. That's what worked. They had for hundreds of thousands of dollars of stone.
Okay.
They stabilized it and corrected it.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because Kennedy told me that bit of information, and I just forgot to mention that. But
It
yeah.
worked.
And it's still in good shape.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's across,
Yeah, it's called Roundabouts, right
right across the street by McDonald's. There's that big parking lot for the trucks. They brought in thousands of thousands of dollars of stone didn't fix the problem, so they had to soil stabilize everything, and it fixed it well. So, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Correct. Yep, I think God's been gracious to us, frustrating to me at times, frustrating to you. But in the end, he's been gracious, given us wisdom when we didn't know what we needed. And yeah, I mean, when we do this, none of us will be here when they have to do it again, hopefully, right?
Brandon in the back.
Yeah, Brandon.
So if we take the $70,000 loan, we don't need to use it all, could we return some of it back to the bank so we're not having to repay it, or how would that work?
We would know the number a lot closer. They need about 2 to 3 weeks out before we have to finalize the number. And we have, what did I say? How much money now just kind of sitting in the bank, up close to 500,000 or more. I forget. We have a bunch to start paying bills. We have not gotten one bill yet from Kennedy, so we have time to start paying bills.
Yeah, and there's a payment time on, once we receive that invoice. I'll just say that my company pays Kennedy in like 90 to 100 days. So they're used to, they're hoping for faster payment terms than that from us, but we have time to figure that out so we can take out the loan for the proper amount.
Yeah, we have $700,000 waiting to pay. So we can start paying bills, and then when we get closer, they've already said, we just need a couple weeks to get your final paperwork in line, so.
Like he was asking though, can we pay that 70,000 back if we don't need it all?
Oh, yes, yeah. There's no early payment penalty. We're working through security first, so they've kind of worked well with us. The fact that they even gave us 10 years is kind of shocking, to be honest with you. Most of the time they don't do that, so, with churches anyways. All right, any other questions? I'm going to have these two young, strapping men pass around our ballots. Yes, in the back, Scott. Interest rate is 7.75. Is that what I told you guys? 7.75. And that was back a while ago. They locked us in at that, but he did say if the time comes, if the number's lower, we can look at lower, but he wouldn't penalize us and make us go higher, so. And I just sent him an email this past week in light of all this saying, we're probably gonna need some financing, and I just haven't heard back from him yet. Any other questions? If not, I need a motion. Brandon seconds. All right, and then everyone get a ballot. Raise your hand if you did not. You think? Oh, this side. And it's like all clay over there. All right, yeah, yeah, you're good. Jonathan, if you could help, can you help Jim Gordon? Can you help count? All right, everyone get theirs passed in. Is this extra? Did you guys vote? 14 times. All right. Oh, there you go. So it is, I keep saying this, but it's been good to have Tim be on this project because he's here pretty much every day. And we have our daily talks on the phone typically, so it's been helpful. Without him, there's a language out there that I don't know, and he knows that language and is helping us through this. And so I trust him, and I trust the guys at Kennedy because he's had a good relationship with them for a while, and so that kind of helps us go through some of these waters for sure. So thank you for being here this morning. Motion to adjourn. I always forget that. Greg, you want to just pick Jan and just, who was the other one? Oh, there we go, right there. Milt. All right, let me close in prayer. God, thanks for how you keep providing for us. God, thank you for giving us the wisdom on this parking lot project. We would love to have been further along at this point in time, but we're trusting you with the results. We trust that in the end, you're going to give us a better parking lot for waiting than we would have if we would have rushed things. And so thank you for going before us as you promised to do. And be with us now as we head to worship. Help it to be a time that is encouraging and to us and pleasing to you. In Christ's name, amen. All right, thank you. Go grab some coffee, fellowship for a while. We'll start here in a little bit.